The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to connect you with two members from the Richmond area and Henrico County. Delegate Manoli Loupassi, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Woody.
Delegate John O'Bannon, great to have you here again.
Thank you, Woody. Glad to be back.
Well, you're one of, 4 or 5 physicians in the General Assembly, is that correct?
We actually have 4 now. We have one person who presides over the state senate. That's Ralph Northam, who's our lieutenant governor. We have 3 guys over in the House. We have a couple of pharmacists and a nurse, and we have a healthcare group.
And Delegate Loupassi, I know by background training and experience and practice, you are an attorney.
Yes, sir.
And as a result, you serve on some very important committees, not the least of which is Courts of Justice.
Yes, sir.
Tell us a little bit about your background and experience. I know that your dad came from Greece, started a small business which thrives here in the Richmond area. That taught you a lot of things about hard work and other values. Tell us what has formed the basis of your views in terms of legislation and the work you do here in the General Assembly.
Well, I think it's like you said, you know, my dad immigrated here from Greece. It's a war-torn country. And, you know, essentially what I observed of him in my lifetime was, you know, hard work and diligence and saving your money and being responsible, paying your taxes. And so, you know, I don't work as hard as he does, but I work pretty hard. I try to do the best I can. And I think that when you have those types of experiences in life, it kind of leads you to, you know, it's what you said, it affects how you view things. And I believe in America as a place where there is an opportunity that the system provides us. And it provides you the ability to pursue your talents. And to the extent that you're willing to pursue your talents, you can become very successful here. We have a you know, the President of the United States is a great example. You know, an African American who has become the leader of the free world. That can only happen in America, and so I just think that people forget that that's what the country has to offer us, is an opportunity, and we should work hard on our own to take advantage of the system we have.
And what are some of the things that drove you into politics?
I kind of just fell into it. I was I was prosecuting for the city in the city of Richmond, and I just, you know, when you're in it, when you're in that environment, you naturally gravitate towards you're involved in the political process, and so at times people would say something to me, I'd never even thought about it, but it just one thing led to another.
And John, I understand that you were helping your parents sell fruit from a fruit stand while you were growing up, but you were involved in politics during your career in school, were you not?
Well, Woody, it's interesting. Yes, I grew up in Rappahannock County, up in the country, and came to the University of Richmond and got a job as an orderly because I didn't want to go back and work on the farm because that was hard work. And met my wife, who was a secretary over at Richmond Memorial Hospital, and was involved in student government at that level. We've had our family here, all went through public schools, and my wife got interested in politics before I did at a local level. She was very interested in zoning in the neighborhoods. I was interested in the profession and medical issues that related to practice, and was coming down here as an advocate. And so when the opportunity came a few years ago, I went on and put my hat in the ring, and it's a life-changing event to get into the political process. But it gives you a chance to be helpful and change lives.
Now, you've got the western portion of Henrico County.
Yes. We actually have several of us who represent Henrico. We have Manoli, actually, who now has part of the near west end, where the JCC is. I have the near, from, say, Douglas Freeman, University of Richmond area, all the way up to some of Glen Allen. We have Jimmy Massey, who is just west of me and kind of encircles me. And then we have Peter Farrell, who represents the Short Pump area and the Windham area. And on the east side, we have other folks.
And how has Henrico County changed over your career?
Henrico is really interesting. We have a wonderful, diverse population of people. We have a nice mix of industry, business, and homes. We have a good, Henrico has what's called a county manager form of government, which you well understand, because that is not unlike the city manager forms. Back in 1934, Henrico voted to do its own roads and go to a county manager form of government. So that has served Henrico really well. They have a stable leadership. They have a board of supervisors, and the only thing that board can do is either hire or fire the county manager. So they really don't get into the day-to-day, do this, do that. A lot of that is a professional relationship between the county manager and the rest of county government.
You know, I believe there's only one other county in the Commonwealth that maintains its own roads.
That's correct, and that's Arlington County.
Manoli, tell us a little bit about the changes you've seen during your tenure here in your district.
We haven't really, in my district, I haven't really experienced a lot of change. I represent the near west end, and then across the river, I represent Bon Air and Salisbury. And so the district's changed, and then I've added a few places. You know, I added Stonehenge and some places a little bit further out in Chesterfield, and parts of Henrico were added to my district in this last, census when we redistricted. But the population is pretty stable. It's a suburban, urban district, and so there's not a lot of new developable land, so it's pretty much developed out, I guess, and the neighborhoods are very stable, so there's not a lot of transition, really, not a ton of it. So so the populace that I represent, the constituency that I represent, is fairly stable.
Now, what about the economy in your district and in the Richmond area as a whole? Because we've gone through some tough economic times. We're slowly getting out of that. The unemployment rate is down, but there's still a lot of people who need work.
Yeah, yes, my part of the city is, really it's the value of the houses that, where you look at how the economics are, because most of the people in my area are employed. I don't represent the areas of the city that are more socioeconomically challenged, and but the housing, as you know, the housing plummeted in 2008, and I think it's just now that we're kind of seeing housing values sort of creeping back up to those levels, and as you know, they would eventually, but I would say the last, in the state government, and local governments, the last 5, 6, 7 years have been very difficult economically.
Go ahead, John.
Actually, it's a really good thing for your viewers to hear about. If you take the unemployment rate as a measure of a region's health status as far as the economy, we are just now being a little better than our Hampton Roads and our Northern Virginia. But the big picture over the last, not since the Great Recession, but say the last 2 or 3 years, has been sequestration and the cuts to our military budget in Virginia. And that has affected us secondarily. But when we look forever, since we've ever had numbers, Virginia followed the nation. In other words, if the nation went into a recession, Virginia's things went down. The nation came out, Virginia came out. Last year, first time in history, our revenues went down when the rest of the country's revenues were going up because of sequestration. Northern Virginia, the Homeland Security funding has gone way down, and the Port of Hampton Roads and the other military facilities. We almost lost the aircraft carrier George Washington to Mayport down in Jacksonville, Florida. So we actually are, and we're aware of this, everybody's working on this as far as the economy and jobs and workforce, but Richmond has been a little more resilient than, say, Northern Virginia or some of the other regions. So we owe that, I think, to the diversity of what we have here. We have lots of different businesses. We have government, which people can argue one way or the other. More government jobs are good or bad, but the fact is that we are doing a little better, and Manoli's right. The leading indicator is housing, home sales, and home building.
And of course, the big issue every year is the budget and the necessity under the Constitution to balance that budget. There was a special session late last year which addressed some of those issues. What yet has to be done?
That's a great question. We actually had three. We have 3 budgets. We have the budget we eventually got to in June. We had a September, and then we had the last one we did. So we actually, and give Governor McAuliffe credit, we actually bilaterally, both sides agreed, because of the $2.4 billion deficit we had, that we had to do something. So that last one we passed put in place a process where we closed a lot of that gap. We used some rainy day fund money, and we left about $370 million that we had to deal with now, just like you say, because we have to have a balanced budget. So the governor's introduced his. He swept some balances. He put in some things. He wanted his, to be part of his proposal. And where we are now is we have that. We'll be going through that. We'll be balancing that 373, make those cuts, and come up with what we think are our priorities going forward.
And Delegate Loupassi, what are you hearing from your constituents in terms of their priorities around the budget, especially as that affects education, health care, public safety? I know that every year you do a constituent survey where you seek input, and I'm sure that you've been looking at that input.
Well, I mean, by and large, my constituency wants the government to be run in a frugal manner. They want a commitment to education and to educational dollars, and they don't want their taxes raised. And I would assume that John's, I've probably described accurately his district too. That's I think what I've said is fair.
Now, how is the school system faring from your point of view?
Well, I have 2 very different, really three different school systems, but Richmond City is part of my district, and it's they have a new superintendent, and so he's trying to do some things. We did get a new comprehensive high school built, which is the first high school that has been built in the city in probably 40 years, Huguenot High School. So I think that's exciting for the people who live in that area. I do think that long-term that system needs to figure out a way to close a number of schools so that they spend less money on facilities and facility management. They have a better product that they deliver to the folks that go there, and then spend less money on old buildings and whatnot. So that's something that they've been grappling with. The problem is every time they try to close a school, it just becomes a political issue. And we have elected school boards, so it's sort of been a vexing problem for 20 years that I've been around. And Chesterfield County, where I represent, has got incredible schools. Robius Middle School, James River High School, Midlothian High School. They're fantastic public schools. So there are different challenges associated with both.
And of course, over the last few years, there has been an attempt to improve local schools through legislation. Some of that legislation has been struck down by at least one court as unconstitutional. Legislation would have allowed the takeover of failing schools. We've also had issues around the standards of learning. I assume those issues still remain and are going to have to be addressed.
You're exactly right, Woody. It's interesting. Virginia's Constitution has specific language. It is the state government's job to educate the children. And so that is one of the things that was at issue when you look at the state taking over a failing school, because that responsibility goes to localities. I think in the big picture, we'll mention one thing. I think most of us have been very comfortable with the decisions that have been made in this budget cycle about not really cutting K through 12 because of that fact that it is an essential service of government. Having said that, we have enrollments not going up but so fast in most parts of the state. And we have challenges with underperforming schools. That is a challenge of a fairly significant degree in Henrico, where we have a number of schools that are not doing well. And we have a process in place where we're trying to deal with that. So we will be looking at further reforms to the SOLs. They've been out there a while now. There's nothing wrong with looking at those to see if you can't streamline that or make it better. And looking at how we get, you raise the base, you float the boat, if you will, so that more schools are doing better from the bottom up.
What about higher education? I saw a report recently, students are starting to complain, I believe it's at Virginia Tech or the university, that tuition is going up already. And obviously the junior colleges may be impacted by this budget cycle. Where do you see things coming out?
It is a very big challenge because you have multiple levels you have about 5 of them that are top tier, and then you've got a whole bunch that are in the middle. And the process of funding is a mixture of state level funding and plus the universities. So if you have flagships that can hire more, bring in more out-of-state students and build up their budgets by doing that, and you have a lot of other schools, VCU here in Richmond, where my wife went and I went to the medical side. They don't have a whole lot of out-of-state students, so they don't have that luxury. The other issue is, and this was from a JLARC study, JLARC is our watchdog group, where they found that a lot of the schools that are not the ones that have wonderful ball teams are increasing mandatory student fees to cover the sports. And so actually Kirk Cox, whose son I think went to Longwood, has got in, as a result of that JLARC study, has got in a bill I think that is going to try to limit how much those mandatory fees can charge for the student who may or may not participate in the sports to support the athletics. So those are just some of the challenges. We've got our community college system, great system. How do you integrate that? We do have a proposal where if you go 2 years there, you can get into college. So we'll work on it.
And of course, those community colleges play an important role not only for students who can't afford to go to our institutions of higher learning, but for adults who have been displaced by the economy, who need to learn new skills. So they are very important, I assume, to you and your constituents.
Absolutely. They're also great for students to get their first 2 years and at a very reasonable price, and then transition to a full-time university. So there's a program in place now that if you attend if you're a full-time student and attend a community college, that if you sign a contract going in that you're going to achieve a certain level there, that you'll automatically have a place at Virginia or at James Madison. You sign the agreement, and if you meet those levels, then you automatically are guaranteed a spot. So that's pretty, I mean, that's a great program.
Let's turn our attention to some particular pieces of legislation that you both are sponsoring this session. Your highway maintenance bill, we talked a little bit about earlier, is an important one for you.
Yeah, I think it's great. All right, so here's the thing. All right, if a locality converts an existing roadway, not a roadway, but one of the lanes, say you have an under-traveled roadway, and you convert that lane into a bike lane, right now you lose state funding for that part of pavement. So if you were a local government official, like Ms. O'Bannon, you would never convert a bike lane because you'd be like, well, why would I do that? Because I'm going to lose my money. I can't even pay for the pavement now. So you never would do that. So the idea behind this is we're not going to take away your funding, but we want to encourage you to do this because it's good for people's health and it's good for our, you know, you're talking green earlier, it's good for the environment to not, you know, to have people biking and, you know, in general, it's better to separate, seems to me, the bikes from the roadways from a public safety standpoint too. So I think all of those things kind of conjoin, and it's a good idea. And if you're willing and able to do it, you shouldn't lose the funding for that space there.
And John, I think you have a particular piece of legislation you wanted to discuss as well.
Yeah, thank you. The governor and attorney general, to their credit, convened a task force on the problem we have in Virginia of prescription drug misuse or abuse and heroin abuse. And we now are on the verge of having more people die of overdoses from prescription drugs, oxycodone, OxyContin, morphine, as well as heroin. We're almost killing more people from drug overdoses than we are on the highways. The numbers have doubled in 10 years.
And these are prescription-related drugs?
These are medications that are legal prescription, FDA-approved drugs, which are very strong for pain control. We have a mandate to not let anybody suffer pain, and we balance that against the risks of these strong medicines. And the fact that we have a lot of folks who have a historical problem with substance abuse or misuse. That's in the population. It's not a weakness. It's a real medical diagnosis. And in my business as a neurologist over the last year, I have unfortunately had to sit down with multiple families. And the story is going to be that this was a person who had a substance abuse problem, who got strong pain medicines, or if they resorted to street heroin, and then used alcohol, and then maybe some other drug like Valium, and they basically stopped breathing. Law enforcement's aware of the problem, the medical community is aware of the problem. So this task force has come up with a number of things, some of which have been done in other states. There is a medicine, a drug called Narcan, or naloxone, which reverses opium in the brain. And if you're not breathing because you're overdosed, this medicine will bring you right out of it and wake you right up. So the idea is to get this medicine out where it will be of value, whether it's with law enforcement. First responders already have it on the rescue squads. But this would be if you have a family member or somebody that this medicine could be in the medicine chest, that if you find somebody, you can use it and save a life. Other states have done this. And so this is something I think is really important. I think everybody's in agreement it's the right thing to do, and so we're going to try to get that done at a state. We did a pilot for 2 parts of the state last year.
So it's kind of like an EpiPen.
It is, yes.
That's a good analogy. That's a good analogy. I like that.
I should have
like
started with that. Yes, it's a rescue,
That's
just
great.
like
That's a great
epinephrine if
idea.
you have an anaphylactic reaction.
Sure. I think ethics reform is on the agenda this year, and it was on the agenda last year as well. What kinds of things do you think are necessary in that regard?
I mean, I think just do away with the gifts, but we'll see what they come up with. I mean, they're gonna study this. They've been studying it, and there are proposals out there, and there'll be a separate subcommittee that has hearings about it, and they'll figure out what the correct balance is. But my guess is they're gonna set the limit on gifts real low, probably $50 or $100 or something like that, and then reporting for everything. And I think that's good. I think that's good.
Go ahead.
I'll tell you, this is a good example of where we do and can work together, because we've had both sides of the aisle involved in these discussions. I agree with Manoli that we need to obviously lower the gift limit. I think we need to address some of these definitions of relationships. What is a friend, and who can give you things and not report? Probably need to report everything. We also have situations where there are thousands of boards and commissions of various types across the Commonwealth. And I don't know that we have it written in statute that a person should not vote on an issue if they have a direct financial involvement in an issue at those levels, whatever kind of board it is. So I think we'll definitely come to some consensus on the ethics issue, and it's an example of how we really are working together.
And of course, as you indicate, definitions are important. You talk about the relationships. I guess the other definition regards intangible gifts and whether they need to be reported. Is that something that's likely to be debated as well?
Yeah, I think they're going to do the same thing for those. They're just going to treat it all the same and just say if it's over $50, you report it. That's what I think is going to happen. But I kind of set a rule in my office now. So, people bring by stuff all the time to your office, like little trinkets or flashlights or just all that stuff, just stuff, and they have their name of the organization on it.
Right.
So basically, the rule for me is we don't take any gifts. Just don't bring us anything. For me personally, because I don't need the stuff. And it's not,
I think what bothers the public is the idea that there are perks to this, that you can get some football tickets if you want them or things like that. And I think I think that's an artificial definition. If it's worth something of value, and it probably should count and you should not take it.
Yeah, because sometimes the appearance, more than anything else, upsets the public.
Right. That's
I agree.
Right. It's better just to pay, You go on the game, you pay for the ticket. You got to pay for the ticket, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes.
No, absolutely. About a minute left, but I do want you to give us a few comments on one of the governor's attempts again to include Medicaid expansion into the debate. So I'll let you talk about that if you don't mind.
We had the debate last year. We do not going to expand Medicaid in Virginia, as best I can tell. I think that is linked at the hip to the federal ACA, Obamacare. Obamacare has been a real challenge on many levels. We have a big, important Supreme Court case coming up. Obamacare may be renegotiated, so I think we're on the right side of this. We have been working very hard in Virginia to improve health care, to reform the Medicaid program, to enhance the clinics that we have that are already involved. So I don't think that's going to happen this year.
Thank you both for being here, Delegate John O'Bannon, Delegate Manoli, Loupassi. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans. Mm-hmm.